Ryan Yamamoto. This is the Minute of Breaking the Weather today in Southern California as fire crews work on containing the devastating wildfires. The Eaton fire is now 55% contained, the Palisades fire 22%. Together, they have scorched 60 square miles and destroyed more than 12,000 buildings. A ceasefire agreement between Israel and Hamas has reached a last-minute snag. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says Hamas is making new demands going back on the original agreement. The deal would see a break in the fighting and hostages released as soon as Sunday. In Oakland, former city council member Lauren Taylor filed papers this morning to officially enter the race for Oakland mayor. He'll run against several other candidates, including former East Bay Congresswoman Barbara Lee. A special election is scheduled for April. The Bay Area's only primetime newscast at 8 and 9 p.m. on Pix Plus 44 Cable 12.
You're streaming CBS News Bay Area.
Here's what we can expect as we head into the next couple of days. First things first, we have light offshore winds. Nothing to write home about, but it is important to note because, of course, the winds were the big weather story for us all throughout California, all throughout this week. Now, the winds stay light for us throughout our Friday forecast, too, but from today into tomorrow, you might notice a little bit of haze. There is a moderate air quality alert right now widespread throughout the Bay. We're continuing to monitor that closely. We'll see that into this weekend and early next week, too. Now, the other big thing I want to mention, and this is pretty obvious, but it's been dry for us recently here in the Bay, and we're going to continue to see that trend as we head into this weekend and early next week. Reason being, the jet stream's well north of us, dipping back over into the Dakotas, actually. They're giving them a little bit more moisture than what they're used to for this time of year. But back here locally, we're expecting to see not a drop of rain in sight anytime soon, at least. So that's important to note, too, as we head into this weekend's forecast and into early next week if you have any outdoor plans scheduled. Now, right now, we're pretty much sitting in the 60s anywhere from our inland areas over into the coast. Heading into this weekend, we're going to start flirting back and forth with 50s and 60s, and that'll be the trend anywhere from the East Bay all the way into the North Bay, or for our friends all along our coast, too. It'll be a little bit cooler for us as we head into next week. Still clear, though, and it'll be stunning for any outdoor opportunities.
Well, some good news for fire crews in Southern California. The winds continue to weaken today, giving them a chance to gain ground on the deadly wildfires in Los Angeles County. At least 25 people have died in the fire, tens of thousands displaced, more than 12,000 buildings destroyed. Little by little, authorities are allowing people back into their neighborhoods to see what's left. Two of the largest fires are the Palisades and Eaton fires, which have burned more than 60 square miles. The Eaton fire, 55% contained. The Palisades fire, 22% contained. And here's a map showing the scope of the damage in Pacific Palisades. Each one of those red dots represents a building, homes, schools, businesses, anything that was destroyed. The other colors show different degrees of damage. And here's a look at the damage from the Eaton fire. More than 7,000 structures destroyed in the area. Officials say they have completed about 30% of damage assessments. Charlie DeMar reports with the latest from Los Angeles.
California Governor Gavin Newsom has signed an executive order to help speed up the cleanup process in hard-hit areas like here in Altadena and make much-needed repairs to damaged infrastructure. A break in the winds later today could help firefighters gain ground on the wildfires still burning in Los Angeles. The blazes have destroyed more than 12,000 homes and structures and forced 200,000 Angelenos to flee.
Please be assured that our firefighters continue to work 24/7 to achieve full containment of these wildfires as fast as we can.
CBS News has confirmed that as the Palisades fire started on the morning of January 7th, only 19 fire engines were pre-deployed to the area. It's unclear how many might have been sent to the first neighborhood on fire. Hours passed before officials sent out this notice to bring in off-duty firefighters.
I can guarantee you that every resource that was available was working and focused on the mission.
Here's the overview of the house for now.
Associated Press entertainment journalist Ryan Pearson returned to the rubble of his home in Altadena. The ping pong table and a citrus tree survived.
It was a beautiful home for our family, and we are planning to be living here forever.
Sadly, there will be thousands of stories just like that one. And for residents whose homes were spared, there are now air quality issues over the ash that has been blowing from the fires. We're also getting a look at just how much effort it will take to clean up and rebuild.
There's no power, there's no gas, there's no water to drink.
Crews are digging holes to put power poles back in, a ground-up effort along the decimated Malibu coast. Containment of both the Palisades and Eaton fires has increased daily. This as dangerous fire conditions are expected to return next week.
Well, back here in the Bay Area, local businesses are stepping up to help. And today we spoke with the owner of Manny's in San Francisco. He and a friend are taking donations for those who have lost everything.
We all have a part to play in our future, and we cannot believe that we are just passive observers of what happens in the world around us. And especially in San Francisco, we were made for this moment. San Francisco was born out of tragedy, born out of disaster, born out of the need for people to come together to make it through hard times. Yep. And so, and Manny's, obviously, what we're all about is giving people a physical place and an opportunity to get involved. And I have to tell you guys, I have been completely overwhelmed by the outpouring of physical support, by people coming. From the moment we've opened our doors until the moment we close them, people have been bringing everything they can to support these folks. So I think in times like this, it's really the only thing that we can do, which is to ask the question, how can we get involved? How can we help? And San Francisco is showing up in this moment.
And CBS News is partnering with the Red Cross to raise money for those impacted by the Southern California wildfires. You can go to redcross.org/CBS to donate. Call 1-800-RED-CROSS, or you can text Red Cross to 90999 to make a $10 donation. Well, there is uncertainty today over the agreement in the ceasefire in Gaza. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu now casting doubt over the deal, citing some sort of last-minute crisis with Hamas. Meanwhile, the bombing continued overnight in Gaza. Before news of the potential snag, people on both sides of the war celebrated news of the agreement for a ceasefire and hostage release. That deal includes 3 phases, each lasting 6 weeks. The first phase is supposed to start Sunday, with Hamas releasing some of the nearly 100 hostages still being held. They would be released in exchange for hundreds of Palestinian prisoners. Israel would pull back its troops in Gaza and restart the flow of humanitarian aid. Netanyahu's cabinet would still have to approve the deal first. And over the last year and a half, we've seen repeated calls for a ceasefire right here in the Bay Area. Demonstrations grew into encampments and building occupations on college campuses like UC Berkeley, San Francisco State, and Stanford. And demonstrators took over the Bay Bridge, snarling traffic for hours and leading to dozens of arrests. Our John Ramos spoke with Israeli and Palestinian supporters about a reported deal that now appears to be in question.
For two groups that have agreed on almost nothing for more than a year, the responses left everyone feeling unsure of what they felt.
Caution, fear, relief, elation. They're all in there, but relief is number one.
We are heartbroken and relieved. This ceasefire is long overdue.
This latest flare-up in the Israel-Palestinian saga began, of course, on October 7th of 2023, with the coordinated surprise attack on Israeli citizens by Hamas. The savage violence, murder, and kidnappings led many to believe it was meant to force Israel into a massive response. It was something Tyler Gregory of the Jewish Community Resource Center foresaw as he addressed a Jewish audience in San Francisco the following day.
Well, the first priority for Israel is getting the terrorists out. The second priority is rescuing these hostages in a harrowing situation. And then we must be prepared and be resilient for the campaign that follows inside of Gaza.
The retaliation began almost immediately, with Israel releasing a furious attack, including on civilian locations in Gaza, and communities were reduced to rubble. As the campaign roared on, outraged Palestinian supporters hit the streets, with protests and civil disobedience aimed at turning public opinion against the state of Israel. Samer Arabi says he can hardly believe that violence may finally be ending.
We've been out on the streets almost every week, calling politicians, talking to our elected officials, organizing with our neighbors, whatever we could possibly do, blocking highways, you name it, to get someone to get us to this point of a ceasefire. We've been asking for a ceasefire from day one. And the thought that maybe that might be ending today, it's huge, right? It's hard not to feel, almost overwhelmed by the possibility that this carnage can stop.
At Temple Beth Abraham in Oakland, Rabbi Mark Bloom acknowledged that the local protests against Israel took their toll, leaving a lot of Jewish residents feeling pretty isolated.
Yeah, we felt very alone as Jews in this area. We felt people didn't really understand the existential threat or the horror that was faced on October 7th. So we definitely felt that. We also know that we live in the Bay Area, and that's not necessarily the way the entire country feels.
After so much rage and bloodshed, it's hard for anyone to feel completely confident that it may be coming to an end. But there is an eerie similarity to the timing of this deal and what happened in 1981 when the Iranian hostages were released just as Ronald Reagan, another tough-talking Republican, was being sworn into office after defeating one-term Democrat Jimmy Carter.
It does feel very Carter/Reagan vibes, the way this has gone down with Biden and Trump. It does feel somewhat like that. And actually, there was even reported in the Times of Israel, somebody said, Trump accomplished more, in a couple meetings than Biden did in a year.
No one, last of all me, would think that Donald Trump would be better for our communities. But it is interesting to note that it was his threats and his urging that this be resolved before he take office that coincides with when and how this happened.
There were no winners. Israel still feels threatened, and the question of Palestine's future is still very much up in the air. On the day the ceasefire was announced, people on both sides are wondering what, if anything, was accomplished by any of this.
And despite the concerns raised by Prime Minister Netanyahu, the U.S. Deputy National Security Advisor told CBS Mornings Today he fully expects the deal to proceed as planned. Well, still ahead on CBS News Bay Area, a new plan to tackle San Francisco's fentanyl crisis, how Mayor Lurie's state of emergency declaration would change the city's strategy. Plus, just days before a new administration is in the U.S., fear sweeping through the undocumented community in the Bay Area. How local nonprofits are educating people about their rights. And the high hopes for tourism in the Bay Area this year, the San Francisco businesses that are already seeing a boost.
It's another dry day for us today here in the Bay Area, with daytime highs topping off mostly in the 60s, anywhere from the Santa Clara Valley all the way up into the North Bay. We'll see some cloudier skies as we head into our Friday and Saturday forecast. A similar trend for Sunday, but not a drop of rain in sight. And we head over to the areas closer to the coast, like Half Moon Bay and Pacifica. We're seeing a similar trend with our daytime highs. We're all starting to cool down day by day as we head into next week. We'll see upper 50s anywhere from the coast all the way off into the East Bay as early as next Monday.
Well, San Francisco Mayor Daniel Lurie is making moves to tackle the city's drug crisis with his first proposed law. He announced his fentanyl state of emergency ordinance after submitting it to the Board of Supervisors. It comes as the city is already seeing improvements in the first 11 months of the year. The chief medical examiner's office reported a 23% drop in fatal overdoses compared to a year before. Lauren Toms reports on how Lurie hopes to expand on that progress.
Well, just 1 week ago, right here on the steps of City Hall at his own inauguration, Mayor Daniel Lurie vowed to declare a fentanyl state of emergency. And today we're seeing the beginnings of that, but not without hurdles from the Board of Supervisors.
All I can say is around this market, around this plaza, things have improved greatly.
In Civic Center Plaza, things are looking up, at least during the day. Steve Pulliam has worked at this farmer's market that provides a critical food source for the area's low-income population. But it hasn't always been easy, as the area saw a spike in safety issues during the pandemic, as fentanyl exacerbated drug use and crime. But he says in the last 2 years, extra resources have made a big difference.
There's a lot of help that we have now. We have Urban Alchemy that's helping out. We have park rangers now that come to the area, to the market. Even SFPD shows up every now and then. So we just have a lot of a wide range of support that I was having trouble getting a couple of years ago.
Newly minted Mayor Daniel Lurie wants to fast-track even more resources to fight fentanyl through a new emergency ordinance. The order aims to cut red tape for hiring and contracting services. In some cases, contracts could be awarded without going through a competitive bidding process. It also opens the door for raising private funds for resources for those struggling with addiction, drug use, mental health crises, and homelessness.
We can no longer treat this fentanyl crisis like a 9-to-5 issue. This is a crisis that happens 24 hours a day.
The order has already been backed by 5 members of the Board of Supervisors, including Matt Dorsey, who battled addiction himself.
I do not believe there is a problem facing San Francisco today that isn't either wholly caused by or made significantly worse by street-level drug addiction, and by far fentanyl is the biggest culprit.
But Lurie needs the support of at least 6 supervisors for the order to pass. It could face hurdles from more progressive members like Connie Chan, who voiced concerns to the mayor. In a statement, she told CBS News Bay Area that she is, quote, open to providing the mayor and his city departments the tools necessary to tackle the fentanyl crisis, adding that the ordinance must maintain checks and balances of the legislative branch. Substantial progress has been made during daytime hours around Civic Center Plaza, but Police Chief Bill Scott said the order could unlock even more resources to shore up the area when drug use and crime return overnight.
I know we have issues at nighttime when things move around, but it's like this every day now. And that's what we want every day, all day for all parts of the city.
Meanwhile, Steve and the vendors at the farmers market are grateful to still be serving the community, optimistic that new leadership can bring about more change.
And we made it out of it alive. Anything that can help, people that are in a crisis, I think that I don't have to say more is more.
And a new city report also shows there is still a great need when it comes to caring for people with behavioral health issues. It recommends that San Francisco add as many as 135 residential care beds to meet the growing demand. Well, a school community is in mourning after 3 students from Hollister High School were killed in a crash near Gilroy. Police say the driver lost control Tuesday night and hit an oncoming car. Another former student was also critically injured in the crash and was flown to the hospital. Investigators looking into whether drugs or alcohol were involved. In Oakland, neighbors are weighing in on its police department's chase policy. Right now, police officers can only go after suspects of violent crimes or gun offenses. This comes weeks after Governor Newsom said the city's policy is just too restrictive. Some residents, including interim council president Noel Gallo, say this policy encourages criminals and needs to change.
I live in East Oakland and I see the robberies that are occurring. People come out of town, rob it, and take off in their car, and the officers sitting there watching.
Newsom has warned Oakland to revise its policy or risk losing CHP support. Well, President-elect Trump will be sworn into office just 4 days from now, and during his second term, he promised a swift crackdown on illegal immigration, even potential mass deportations. Immigration sweeps were carried out this week in the Central Valley, and now some farm workers and others across California say they are scared to show up to work. And here in the Bay Area, advocates worry the recent sweeps are just a foreshadowing of what's to come. However, San Jose immigrant communities are getting some protection from city leaders. Yesterday, city council members introduced multiple recommendations to strengthen and protections for undocumented people. This includes fully funding and supporting the Rapid Response Program, a team that responds to any reported ICE sightings, as well as expanding legal assistance programs.
We saw a large deportation machine during Trump's last presidency, and so that's why I want to make sure that the City Council is getting prepared and that we're locked in step with community-based organizations.
Each recommendation was submitted to the Rules Committee and was unanimously approved. Meanwhile, local nonprofits are working to educate people about their rights in the event of Bay Area deportations. Veronica Macias has that story.
Like millions of children across the country, Tiffany is worried about her parents, who are two of nearly 1.8 million undocumented immigrants in California.
They're both immigrants, and it just overall scares them. And whenever they go to work, they're like, well, if anything happens, and it's really scary to think about that, but there can always be a possibility of something happening.
Fear and anxiety is sweeping through the undocumented community as migrant groups have shed light on unannounced raids by the U.S. Border Patrol in Kern County. However, a Scripps poll conducted in November of last year found that a majority of Americans, 54%, are in favor of mass deportations. That includes a quarter of Democrats saying they are in support. There is precedent for mass deportations promised by President-elect Trump. During the mid-1950s, under Operation Wetback, at least 1.3 million people were deported, a history and reality that weighs heavily on Tiffany.
See, they both decided to come here at a really young age and, overall just to give us a good future. And so, seeing that all this stuff is being done now, it's like, I feel like all the work that they've put into coming here and working their whole lives, it's going downhill.
First-generation students like Tiffany feel a responsibility to help, starting by eliminating some of the anxiety by learning what rights people have, regardless of their legal status.
There's a lot of fear and anxiety and uncertainty.
Judith Guerrero is the executive director of Coastside Hope in Half Moon Bay, a nonprofit that is working to educate and help the immigrant community ahead of President-elect Trump taking office.
Our organization with other local organizations, Puente, Alas, Caron, Immigration Institute of the Bay Area, we have been hosting Know Your Rights workshops so that folks know that they do have some rights and that they can be prepared if ICE does come to your door.
Tiffany, meanwhile, feels confident in her state leaders and immigration advocates providing sanctuary in the state of California and that history will not repeat itself.
Well, California is also among 14 states trying to defend DACA recipients' access to health care currently. A Biden administration rule that would provide health insurance to Dreamers is on hold because of a legal challenge. And now with President Biden leaving office, the states are set to take over, defending the case in court. Still ahead, the Bay Area's tourism industry was slow to recover from the pandemic, but it could finally be bouncing back. Why business owners are now feeling optimistic.
expect light winds pushing offshore as we head into this afternoon, with sunny skies widespread throughout the Bay Area as we head into the forecast today. Tomorrow we'll see a little bit more cloud coverage, and currently we're under a moderate air quality anywhere from the North Bay down into the Santa Clara Valley. That'll be a similar trend as we head into this weekend's forecast. So if you're sensitive to that pollutant matter like I am, just be very careful out there when you're outside. Limit your time outside and drink plenty of water to clear your throat. Now, as we take a look at the next 6 to 10 days, we're expected to see drier than normal conditions widespread throughout the west coast as the jet stream is well north of us. So not a drop of rain in sight for now. And as we take a look at the next 7 days, here's what we're gearing up for. Low 60s for now, turning into upper 50s as we head into this weekend's forecast. Yeah, we'll see some clouds as we head into Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. But as we head into next week, we'll continue to see sunnier skies with just a little bit cooler weather in the forecast for us. Now we head all the way over into the coast, the exact same setup too. If you live in the East Bay or the coast, our temperatures are pretty much hand in hand as we head into next week.
Well, it's been tough to get visitors back to San Francisco ever since the pandemic, but the city's tourism office now feeling optimistic for the first time in a while. Max Darrow dives into the projections.
This is a uniquely San Francisco experience that people from all over the Bay Area, the country, and the world come to see. That's John Jetty behind the bar at the Buena Vista Cafe, making a round of their world-famous Irish coffee. Add 10 more to the roughly $3 million he's made over the past 16 years.
Rough guesstimate.
And he thinks he'll add many, many more to his total in 2025.
The last 2 weeks have been really crazy busy.
He and the team at the Buena Vista think 2025 will be a big one for San Francisco's tourism rebound.
1952 is when we started the Irish coffee.
Larry Silva is the general manager of the business that has stood strong on the corner of Hyde and Beach for 110 years.
I know we'll do great. I'm hopeful that the neighbors do better.
San Francisco's tourism sector has been slow to recover since the pandemic. The past few years haven't been easy for any business to navigate, especially those in areas that cater to tourists like Fisherman's Wharf.
The area is struggling. Cable car's doing good. Jefferson Street, they need a turnaround. Hopefully, if the tourists come up, that will help.
If you ask Anna Marie Persuti, the CEO of SF Travel, there are reasons to be confident that 2025 will be a good year for San Francisco's tourism sector.
We have a very robust convention calendar. So we have over 35 conventions into the city this year. So it's going to be a much, much better year than we had in 24.
That means a higher hotel occupancy rate. Persuti says there are over 200,000 more hotel rooms on the books this year than there were in 2024.
The biggest contributor to the general fund is the hotel taxes, right? And when those hotels are full and occupancies are high, the city does better.
SF Travel estimates around 23 million visitors in 2025, with spending reaching around $10 billion. Persuti's job is effectively to sell San Francisco to visitors and those who will bring events to the city. Getting them out here for an initial visit, a big part of the equation, but once they got here.
And what we kept hearing time and time again as we got towards the end of the year is, this is nothing like what I saw on television. This is nothing like what people were talking about.
With all eyes on San Francisco hosting marquee events in 2025, including the NBA All-Star Game in February.
We have to show up. And we have to look our best and be our best.
Jetty says he is seeing proof that the outside perception of San Francisco is changing.
I mean, I had a guy from Iowa the other day who had said, I've been here 4 days, John, and I'm really impressed with this town. I heard a lot about it, but I'm really impressed with it.
And that makes him feel better about the city's future.
Good. That was good to hear that. I had positive thoughts finally.
The beginning of a new chapter for San Francisco. Time will tell.
So we had a chance to speak to the Chief Program Officer of DECA, formerly the Distributive Education Clubs of America, that inked a deal to bring 2 international conferences to San Francisco in the coming years. Here's what he had to say about why they are coming back after 30 years.
The walkability, the hotels, the things to do in the city, and the Moscone Center. All those components will just be a great opportunity for our high school students to experience an iconic city and be able to show off their business skills in such a fabulous location.
Well, those 2 conferences are now set for 2027 and 2029. Coming up our next half hour in CBS News Bay Area, we'll introduce you to the man who's watched as flames tore through his neighborhood in Southern California. Now he's among the first on the front lines cleaning up. Plus, homeowners affected by the recent East Bay fires have been victims of repeated break-ins, why police have struggled to protect their neighborhoods. I'm Ryan Yamamoto. This is the Minute of Breaking the Weather today in Southern California as fire crews continue to make progress containing the devastating wildfires. The Eden Fire now 55% contained, the Palisades Fire 22% contained. Together, they have destroyed more than 12,000 buildings. Well, the Justice Department is suing Southwest Airlines over chronic delays. Government officials cite two routes in particular, including one between Oakland and Chicago in 2022. Southwest says those flights from nearly 3 years ago don't represent its overall record. Former Major League Baseball player and famed Milwaukee Brewers broadcaster Bob Uecker has died. He was known as Mr. Baseball, was inducted in the Baseball Hall of Fame back in 2003. His family says he had battled small cell lung cancer. Bob Uecker was 90 years old. The Bay Area's only primetime newscast at 8 and 9 p.m. on the Pix Plus 44 Cable 12.
You're streaming CBS News Bay Area.
Here's what we can expect as we head into the next couple days. First things first, we have light offshore winds. Nothing to write home about, but it is important to note because, of course, the winds were the big weather story for us all throughout California, all throughout this week. Now, the winds stay light for us throughout our Friday forecast, too, but from today into tomorrow, you might notice a little bit of haze. There is a moderate air quality alert right now widespread throughout the Bay. We're continuing to monitor that closely. We'll see that into this weekend and early next week, too. Now, the other big thing I want to mention, and this is pretty obvious, but it's been dry for us recently here in the Bay, and we're going to continue to see that trend as we head into this weekend and early next week. Reason being, the jet stream's well north of us, dipping back over into the Dakotas, actually. They're giving them a little bit more moisture than what they're used to for this time of year, but back here locally, we're expecting to see not a drop of rain in sight anytime soon, at least. So that's important to note, too, as we head into this weekend's forecast and into early next week if you have any outdoor plans scheduled. Now, right now, we're pretty much sitting in the 60s anywhere from our inland areas over into the coast. Heading into this weekend, we're going to start flirting back and forth with 50s and 60s, and that'll be the trend anywhere from the East Bay all the way into the North Bay, or for our friends all along our coast, too. It'll be a little bit cooler for us as we head into next week. Still clear, though, and it'll be stunning for any outdoor opportunities.
Well, in Southern California, families and fire crews getting a break from the winds that fueled destructive wildfires for a week. And there's some good news on the containment efforts. The Eden fire is now 55% contained. The Palisades fire 22% contained. At least 25 people have died in the fire and tens of thousands displaced. More than 12,000 buildings destroyed. And while the firefight is still going on, the tough work of assessing all the damage is now only just beginning. Here's a 3D look at the structural damage from the Palisades fire. Officials say damage inspections are only about 30% complete. Much of that area is still closed to the public. Our Kelsey Thord spoke with a man who plays a crucial role in figuring out when people can return.
All the town's on fire. High school's gone. We still have water pressure here. I got to pull the guys from up above at Mom's house.
This video was shot by Chuck Hart as his beloved neighborhood of Pacific Palisades went up in flames.
I don't even know. We haven't left, but I'm guessing it's all the way down to the beach.
Chuck spent that first day doing all he could to save both his home and his mom's.
Ryan, can we get a little bit of water over here real quick? Yep. And just on that corner.
Miraculously, he saved both homes, but so much of the rest of the neighborhood was flattened. So once the worst of the flames died out and the sun came up, Chuck, who owns a local construction company, grabbed all the gear he could and a crew of 30 men and headed out.
Loaded everybody up, chainsaws in, like fueled up, ready to rock and roll. Dump trucks, everything, just start sectioning trees, cutting trees up, getting stuff out of the way.
For more than a week now, from sun up to sundown, Chuck and his crew have been snaking through the destroyed areas, clearing trees and debris to help first responders get through.
So we did all of Marquez, we did El Medio, which I circled back through there, and there's more trees that have fallen.
Chuck says the fires were so powerful that they seem to have burnt many of the trees from the inside out, creating a huge hazard.
So it's sitting there, and then all of a sudden it just snaps, and then this massive tree falls down. So even though we cleared all the roads, we're going back again because these huge trees have fallen afterwards.
Chuck and his guys are doing all this work 100% on their own time and dime. He told us it's been nice to feel like he can do something to help, but still difficult because it all hits so close to home.
My guys, we pray in and pray out in the morning and at the end of the day. And there's a couple times where I've just broken down because it's intense. This is no joke.
Chuck says he feels like cleaning up the streets he played on as a kid is the least he can do. He's happy they were able to be here the last week to help and can't wait for his neighbors to be able to come back home, too.
These are really wonderful people, and they're going to make this place really wonderful again. And I'm sure they're just chomping at the bit to get in here, to assess what's going on, to get stuff underway. And I 100% support all that.
Well, the San Francisco SPCA is helping Los Angeles shelters free up space for animals displaced by the wildfires. They just welcomed 30 cats and dogs from shelters from down south. They were flown in by Mission Flight and Amelia Air Rescue yesterday at Moffitt Field in Mountain View. The SPCA launched a free puppy promotion this week to help clear space here.
But the way people can help really the most is adopt. If you've been thinking about it, now's the time. Every time we can clear out space here, it means we've got space for another creature from a place that needs it even more.
The San Francisco SPCA says there are 25 puppies up for adoption. Once the Bay Area shelters clear up, they plan to head back to Los Angeles and bring back more animals. And again, CBS is partnering with the Red Cross to raise money for those impacted by the Southern California wildfires. You can go to redcross.org/CBS to donate. Call 1-800-RED-CROSS, or you can text Red Cross to 90999 to make a $10 donation. Well, back here in the Bay Area, Oakland firefighters say a house fire on Lorcher Street could have been contained if a nearby fire station had not been closed due to budget cuts. Firefighters say it took nearly 3 times as long for crews from the next closest station to respond. Thankfully, no one was home when the fire started early yesterday morning. Firefighters Union Local 55 says before the cuts, 90% of fires were handled within 4 minutes. Now they warn future closures could worsen response times.
I mean, statistically, we have 2 structure fires a day in Oakland, so it's a roll of the dice every single time. The city manager and the budget director are gambling with Oaklanders' lives. That is a very clear and truthful message, full stop.
A virtual town hall to address the station closures that will be held tonight at 6 o'clock. Evacuees in Los Angeles whose homes are still standing are still vulnerable to looting or any kind of trouble that can happen while their homes sit empty. One Bay Area family knows the frustration all too well. A couple of homes in the Oakland Hills were damaged in the Keller fire last fall, and now one of them is a target for thieves. It's been hit 8 times since the fire in October. Ardal Lynn spoke to the owners who say they don't know what to do next.
"4101 Maynard Avenue, home of 30 years for Delane Sims and her husband. It was where they raised their children and hosted holiday dinners until the October 18 Keller fire severely damaged it.
It's really horrible. It's like they're just kind of snatching your heart out all over again.
Delane says different people broke into the yellow-tagged house at least 8 times to steal anything that was salvageable in November and December. She says they first broke a lockbox with keys inside meant for the contractors to gain entry. After that burglary, contractors changed the locks.
This is one of the ways in which the thieves came in and they just broke the window and literally crawled in and took a whole refrigerator and took it down the street and put it in a vehicle.
One of her sons slept in a car parked in the driveway to prevent burglaries. Delane says the burglars came back and threatened him when her son confronted the men.
One person slowly put his hand in his pocket, and then my son was able to back his car out of the area. He shortly thereafter saw the police, and they were able to flag them down, and then they were able to come and look for the people, but by then they were long gone.
Nothing left in the home. Most items not damaged by the fire were stolen by thieves.
This is just one of the times that they came in and went into our garage, so everything's been taken out of our garage. There's just nothing left here.
The Oakland Police Officers Association president, Wee Win, says officers feel extremely bad about the burglaries. They wish they could do more, but it's been challenging due to the staffing shortage.
We didn't come to like 8 hours later. Another call, we didn't come to like 3 hours later. So I understand the frustration of our community member. It's very difficult for us to provide the need of our community with the small number of officers that we have.
Delane says she supports the first responders as they experience budget cuts, and she hasn't lost faith on humanity. She's speaking up so other fire survivors can learn from her experience.
I'm convinced that there are more good people in the world just because of how people showed up for us after the fire and how they're showing up for those in Southern California.
Police say no one has been arrested in the burglaries. An investigator told the police department is so severely understaffed they just don't have people investigating these so-called low-priority cases. Up next, concerns about radiation levels at the East Bay Park.
Not enough information is being put out to inform the public.
Where it's coming from and should neighbors be worried?
It's another dry day for us today here in the Bay Area, with daytime highs topping off mostly in the 60s, anywhere from the Santa Clara Valley all the way up into the North Bay. We'll see some cloudier skies as we head into our Friday and Saturday forecast. A similar trend for Sunday, but not a drop of rain in sight. And we head over to the areas closer to the coast, like Half Moon Bay and Pacifica. We're seeing a similar trend with our daytime highs. We're all starting to cool down day by day as we head into next week. We'll see upper 50s anywhere from the coast all the way off into the East Bay as early as next Monday.
Well, the public health official who guided San Francisco through the COVID pandemic announced his resignation today. Dr. Grant Colfax became director of the city's health department back in 2019. Then COVID hit and he became a familiar face to the public as he provided the latest information as the pandemic evolved. Dr. Colfax also led the health department through Mpox and the rise of fentanyl. His last day is next month. Well, some concerns about a shoreline park with a colorful pass. Elevated levels of radiation have been found at the Albany Bulb. Amanda Harry spoke to one scientist who says it may sound scary, but the findings may not be as dangerous as you might think.
Gigi Valdez has been visiting Albany Bulb for years. She gets some exercise, fresh air, and an opportunity to let her dogs burn off some energy. It's one of her favorite ways to get out in nature. That is, until she heard that there are elevated levels of radiation.
I'll be honest, it's always on the back of my mind, the health.
She was so concerned, she temporarily changed her habits.
For a while, I didn't come, but I mean, it's difficult to stay inside. You want to go out in nature.
Albany Bulb was created in the 1960s by filling in a portion of the bay with landfill, and it was used as a landfill until the 1980s. The state ordered testing after documents showed from 1960 to 1971, a former Richmond chemical plant dumped 11 tons of waste around the site. That testing found 10 areas in the park with elevated levels of radiation. Valdez says she didn't know the right way to proceed after hearing the news.
I think that there is a lot of lack of information, and not enough information is being put out to inform the public about the safety.
When UC Berkeley professor and nuclear engineer Kai Vetter heard about the radiation, he wasn't surprised. He says radioactivity is common.
Wherever we go in our world, we'll find radioactivity. All objects in our world are, to some degree, radioactive.
Vetter believes Albany Bulb has experienced similar levels of radiation since it was created. But even in the areas with the highest levels, it's not uncommonly high.
For example, if you go to Denver in Colorado, you find about the same level of radioactivity as we find at the highest point in Albany.
Vetter says based on the radiation levels reported at the park, there are no detrimental health effects.
Therefore, people should continue to enjoy Albany Bulb.
In a statement from the city of Albany, they say they don't have enough information to reach specific conclusions on the public health risk. There will be another round of investigation that'll include soil sampling and shallow subsurface measurements. Valdez is still cautious and wants to hear more about the results and if they plan to reduce the radiation.
But it would be nice if they can tell people, what are you doing, to really reestablish the balance in nature and for the health of the people.
For now, Valdez is going to continue to utilize the park, but she hopes for more transparency and answers in the future.
Well, the city says you can find all the updates on the radiation on their website, albanyca.org. Well, coming up, say hello to El Capitan, our first up-close look at the world's fastest supercomputer located in the East Bay.
expect light winds pushing offshore as we head into this afternoon, with sunny skies widespread throughout the Bay Area as we head into the forecast today. Tomorrow we'll see a little bit more cloud coverage, and currently we're under a moderate air quality anywhere from the North Bay down into the Santa Clara Valley. That'll be a similar trend as we head into this weekend's forecast. So if you're sensitive to that pollutant matter like I am, just be very careful out there when you're outside. Limit your time outside and drink plenty of water to clear your throat. Now, as we take a look at the next 6 to 10 days, we're expected to see drier than normal conditions widespread throughout the west coast as the jet stream is well north of us. So not a drop of rain in sight for now. And as we take a look at the next 7 days, here's what we're gearing up for. Low 60s for now, turning into upper 50s as we head into this weekend's forecast. Yeah, we'll see some clouds as we head into Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. But as we head into next week, we'll continue to see sunnier skies with just a little bit cooler weather in the forecast for us. Now we head all the way over into the coast, the exact same setup too. If you live in the East Bay or the coast, our temperatures are pretty much hand in hand as we head into next week.
Well, breaking news, filmmaker David Lynch has died. He was known for movies such as Mulholland Drive and Blue Velvet and, of course, the TV series Twin Peaks. His family announced his death today. The cause of death is unclear, but Lynch had been public about his battle with emphysema. He died just days before his 79th birthday. Turning now to Livermore, which, if you didn't know, is officially home to the world's fastest supercomputer. Officials say it's being used at the forefront of national security. Our Suji Nam got a look, and a rare look, inside.
Meet El Capitan, the world's fastest and most powerful supercomputer housed in Lawrence Livermore National Laboratory.
Well,
Pythagoras Watson is a team lead for the El Capitan Advanced Technology System.
when people talk about running on high-performance computers, this is the main thing. You put 2 computers in what's known as a blade here, and then you can pack 64 of those into a whole big cabinet here. So that gets you 128 nodes. And then you buy 87 of those racks, and you get to 11,136 individual computers.
More than 11,000 individual computers that come together to help lead the way in all types of research, including national security.
We can simulate climate, we can simulate gene folding, so all the way up through eventually the simulation of nuclear weapons.
El Capitan is in the early access mode, meaning more testing and calculations to eventually process classified information. The $600 million supercomputer will soon run sophisticated calculations that simulate nuclear detonations from the U.S. aging stockpile.
Because we stopped doing underground nuclear testing, we needed to replace that with something, and replace that with simulating on these very large computers to be able to understand how they age.
Livermore Mayor John Marchand says he is proud of the researchers here that have been leading the way to enhance national security measures.
It's about ensuring that the weapons that we have, that when we need them after they've been sitting there for 40 years, are they going to work?
As for computing power at its peak, El Capitan can make 2.79 quintillion calculations per second. Well, what does that mean? Let's say you went back in time 2.79 quintillion seconds, you'd arrive more than 70 billion years before the Big Bang.
Actually have results that match our real experiments.
Watson has been at Lawrence Livermore for 24 years, spending the last 8 years developing El Capitan.
I really love the fact that this is actually something that really helps the country and the world ultimately in doing this research.
Doing research based in the Bay Area, helping protect the nation.
Well, to add some more perspective, the El Capitan supercomputer, so large, it requires 5 to 9 million gallons of water every day to help keep it cool. It also uses about 30 megawatts of electricity. That's about 3 times the amount of power used by the entire city of Livermore. Well, thanks for streaming CBS News Bay Area. I'm Ryan Yamamoto. We'll be right back with your First Alert forecast and a look at your top stories.